The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Don't forget the Body, Soul, Spirit Expo that's being held at the International Centre in Toronto, 6900 Airport Road in Mississauga, right across from Pearson International Airport. Their website, www.bodysoulspiritexpo.com. We're going to be talking to Mark Gumbinger this hour. We're going to be talking to him about the Titanic disaster. Now, he is a marine historian, is a media mainstay, having appeared on countless radio shows and every major TV network. His latest DVD, The Titanic Disaster, is just one of the 36 acclaimed shipwreck and lighthouse programs he's researched and produced over the past 20 years, including the Andrea Dory and, of course, the Edmund Fitzgerald. And joining me now is Mark Gumbinger. And Mark, welcome back to the X-Zone. Nice having you with us.
Well, thanks for having me back, Rob.
I have to ask you this. What is the attraction every year to the Titanic?
It seems to be, it's really the mother of all shipwrecks.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 100 years ago this month, the Titanic sank. And, 200 years from now, long after we've come and gone, people will be talking about it. And 300 years, I think it's a story, it's a comedy of errors, Rob. You have this beautiful ship on her maiden voyage,
mm-hmm.
which started out virtually unsinkable, and somewhere along the way in the media hype and everything, it virtually was dropped, and then it was on the unsinkable ship. And it was almost like they were tempting fate and God that there's no, you're a beautiful vessel.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-boggling. Here, your maiden voyage on 882.5-foot ship. 53,000 tons, carrying over 2,000 people,
mm-hmm.
and it was like a slice of the world in a time capsule. You had it was a little city. You had your first class millionaires, you had your second class, then you had your steerage, your third class, and if just maybe one or two of these like numerous things would have changed, the history would have been changed, and the ship probably wouldn't have sank at all, and it probably would have gone on to 20 or 35-year career, very similar to its sister ship, the Olympic,
mm-hmm.
which is yet even another thing that caused the Titanic to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, because the two sister ships, the Olympic and the Titanic, were being built side by side, and when the Olympic was just a little bit ahead of the Titanic, went out on her sea trial, she ended
mm-hmm.
up colliding with another ship, a German naval vessel, and they had to bring her back and work on her. She was injured and she had a hole in her, but not enough to make her sink.
Wow.
And they took all the men off the Titanic, Rob, and they put her all back over on the Olympic to finish that up. So it pushed the Titanic back another 20 days from her leaving Southampton, England,
mm-hmm.
to head to New York, which actually caused that iceberg to come farther south. And we know the rest from there.
Yeah, having done all the research on so many wrecks and lighthouses, is there a common thread or common element that you've been able to discover when it comes to a shipwreck?
More often than not, it's a combination of human error along with the environment.
All right, stand by, Mark. I'm sorry, we have to go to our commercial break. We'll be right back. Exonation, Mark Gumbinger is my special guest. The website is www.titanicdiverdvd.com. That's www.titanicdiverdvd.com. Mark and I will be back after this 2-minute break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies,
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows,
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net. Welcome back, everyone. Mark Gumbinger is my special guest. His website is www.titanicdiverdvd.com. That's titanicdiverdvd.com. Mark, what are some of the chains of events that actually led to the demise of the Titanic?
There were so many, Rob. It started out, Bruce Ismay, he was the head of the White Star Line. He was the big, the big honcho. Him and Lord Perry, Perry, I should say, back in like 1907, came up with the brainchild idea of let's build 3 massive ships, larger and more beautiful than their competition. The Cunard Line was their main competition for White Star Lines, and they had large, beautiful ships also, but they wanted to really blow, really make a statement, blow them out of the water, so to speak. So they were going to build the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Gigantic. Well, they started with the Olympic and the Titanic, and then after they lost the Titanic, they thought the Gigantic was too ostentatious, so they pulled back on the reins and they called it the Britannic instead. So anyway, the chain of events, Bruce Ismay, they were originally going to have 64 lifeboats on the Titanic. But he thought, well, it takes up a lot of deck space in the promenade deck up in first class, and this ship's virtually unsinkable. We're not, having all these lifeboats is like a bad commercial. Like, what do we need these lifeboats for? So let's instead of having 64, let's cut back to 32. We're never going to need all those lifeboats. And besides, we'll still be compliant because also compliance really for back then, but they weren't making ships 882 feet. Most ships were 300-400 feet long back then. The compliance was 16 lifeboats. And then they started thinking, well, we don't really need 32 lifeboats. Let's just make it 16. But what we'll do is we'll put an additional 4 collapsible lifeboats, and not only will we be compliant, but we'll have 4 additional extra lifeboats that we don't even need just for extra safety precaution. So we'll have even more deck space and promenade space for the first-class passengers, and this will just be wonderful. So the real villain, if you have to point a finger, is Bruce Ismay. Then when they were designing her, they cheapened her up. They used a lower class rivet up in the front where the curve of the ship comes down. ironically, right where the iceberg met the ship. They went from like a third-class rivet to a fourth-class, which had less steel and more slag in it, and it wouldn't withhold as well. Plus, the Titanic, it was that old brittle steel anyhow, that the plates, they were only about an inch thick. And when it became very cold, it became very brittle. And in this case, you have an example of 28-degree water temperature that night,
wow.
Rob. Just you can only imagine hypothermia. You would be unconscious in a matter of minutes and maybe suffer a heart attack and be completely dead in 20 to 30 minutes. It's just that fast. It's just that rapid. And the poor people, you can only imagine, sticking, immersing your hand in that water, for a few seconds. You imagine having to submerge your whole body into that, and instantly you'd be, the only good thing about it is the people didn't suffer that long, because they were so numb so fast. But consciousness was just so rapid. But now getting back to the chain of events, so now you have from 64 to 16 lifeboats and 4 collapsibles. They had the cheaper rivet, so when they hit the iceberg, that rivet popped off and sheared off, and if it was maybe the better class rivet, it might have withheld the impact of the iceberg. The other thing is they were the captain was sailing with Bruce Ismay was on board, and they think his presence alone caused the captain to be schlepping along at about 25 miles an hour, about 23 knots. Wasn't quite her maximum speed, but close. I think she was about 26, 27 was maximum on the Titanic that night. And she was still going along at 25. There were several iceberg warnings that were coming at them, that some which made it to the captain and some which didn't, that said, hey, there's icebergs dead ahead. There were several other ships in the area, including the California, that sent them an iceberg warning about an hour and 10 minutes before she sank. But the Marconi wireless radio operator didn't work for Titanic. They worked for their own company that was leased inside the Titanic. Never shared that last iceberg warning. Never made it up to the bridge to warn of that. In fact, they not only did it not reach the bridge, the wireless operator of the Titanic on the Marconi radioed back this California and said, "Shut up, leave us alone. We're trying to get messages out," because I think they were having problems with the radio earlier, and they were trying to get these messages. You had all these millionaires like John Astor. They were sending these very expensive messages to New York saying, "Hey, we're going to be arriving, such and such time," and sending these great messages. That's how they made their money. They didn't really make money by hearing iceberg warnings. So it's just again, this comedy of errors, Rob. So then this was about, I think that was around 10:30 at night, and at 11:39 they saw the iceberg. And can you imagine this, Rob? Here you have the gentleman, the lookout up in the crow's nest. They didn't have the binoculars with them. They didn't either. They were left in Southampton, England, or they were down in a locker somewhere. Wherever they were misplaced. They weren't where they should have been, up the crow's nest. So they were running up there basically with their naked eye. And then on top of everything else, Rob, it's a moonless night, so you don't have any ambient light from the moon. And it was a flat, dead, calm night, so you didn't have any frothing up on the iceberg where if there was a little bit of a chop, you could see the iceberg a lot sooner. Just a comedy of errors.
One thing right after the next. Why did they think that the Titanic was unsinkable, especially if they used second quality rivets, metal that was only sheet metal that was only an inch wide? What gave them the idea that this ship was unsinkable?
These iron plates are about an inch thick. They had the watertight compartments, but they didn't go all the way up to the top of the ship. They only went up I think 12, 15 feet.
Wow.
If you measured it from the bottom up. They didn't go all the way up to the top where. So what happened when she pierced the side of the iceberg, Rob? 299 feet was partially perfed, where the rivets were sheared off and allowed all that water to come in and sort of peeled back those plates. And they figured that if anything ever happened to the ship, that one or two of those compartments would fill up, but the pumps could keep up with her long enough for another ship to come by. And they never thought in their wildest dreams, under normal circumstances, that those rivets had to be as strong as those other ones. It just happened, that
Wow.
in that area of the ship where it curved up from the keel, right where it curved up by the bow over there, right where she happened to hit the iceberg, was really one of her weaker points. Who would have thunk? If it was under normal circumstances, those Class 4 rivets would have held up for 50 years. It would never have been an issue. So it was sort of an engineering snafu, And then what they later did on the Olympic after the Titanic sank, they didn't even know about the rivets back then, but what they did do is bring the bulkheads up higher and add more lifeboats. So they learned from that anyhow.
How long did it actually take the Titanic to sink, from the time she hit the iceberg until the time she went right under?
About 2 hours and 40 minutes. And the coward, Bruce Ismay, he got on the last collapsible lifeboat, and there was a heck to pay, because the Senate inquiry in New York gave him like 1,000 questions, and under peer pressure, he later left White Star, and he never wanted to talk about it in company. To talk about the Titanic, he would refuse to talk about it in his presence. I mean, he, the designer, the Captain Edwards, they went down with the ship. Bruce Ismay got on that last lifeboat.
Unreal.
He was a coward. He was a villain in this.
In today's money, how much would the first class ticket would have cost?
I forget the amount. I want to say, what was it, $5,000?
Wow.
And some of this is going back from my memory from
Sure.
about a year ago when we were researching this, but I can see if I can cross-reference
Oh,
it.
no,
But,
it's okay. For some reason, I thought it might have been around $5,000 in today's currency, but back then that was a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, if you're John Astor and you're a millionaire, back then a millionaire really meant that you were a million. Unlike today's inflationary money, $1 million back then, you could afford, $5,000 would be chump change. It'd be like you and me, it'd be like 5 cents.
Would it be fair to say that the Titanic was doomed before she even hit the water?
Well, in a sense, because they had all this media hype. Oh, it's virtually unsinkable, and somewhere along the way, the virtual got dropped, and it's unsinkable. Then you had, you had these rivets, and then you had Bruce Ismay and these other choices that we don't need. What they really needed was a bare minimum. I think if you did the math with the amount of passengers on board, I think 49. If you call it 50 lifeboats, should have been the bare minimum for the amount of people on board that night. But obviously 64 would have been about right. And,
so how did they get away with it?
Well, you see, back then, Rob, these ships were 200, 300, 400 feet long,
right?
And the minimum requirement was only 16 lifeboats. But this is a brand new age of shipping, where that last year or two, they were starting to finally build these super-sized ships, and the Titanic being 882.5 feet long, they should have said, hey, this should be a minimum.
Yeah.
If they would have even doubled to 16
to
and
32.
had 32, and then let's say maybe had another 8 or 10 collapsibles, that would have been put in it pretty close.
Hey, Mark, you and I have to take
people.
a commercial break with the news.
Sure.
Stand by. We'll be right back. Mark Gumbinger is my special guest, Exo Nation. Titanic Disaster, DVD.com. We'll be back after this news break. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies,
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows,
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net. Exonation, Mark Gumbinger is our special guest this hour. We're talking about the Titanic, and Mark's got a DVD that is out. It's called The Titanic Disaster. And Mark's website is www.titanicdisasterdvd.com. That's titanicdisasterdvd.com. So looking back as we can with history, how have things changed within the sailing industry, and what was attributed to the loss of life on the Titanic that made it safer for people from that point on?
Yeah, first thing, Rob, what they did was they said the Titanic was obviously sailing way too fast for conditions. They immediately passed a law that there should be an equal amount of lifeboat size for the amount of people on board, and they immediately made those changes to the sister ship, the Titanic sister ship, the Olympic, and other ships that were sailing, and they finally were catching up with the larger length and the larger size vessels to be in compliance with those requests. They also passed a law that you should back then. I think it was around midnight. They would turn the radios off on the ship, so they passed a law that there should be a 24-hour radio communication aboard vessels. And ironically, after they passed that, there was a ship in the Chicago harbor, the Eastland, and it was sort of a top-heavy ship. A couple of years later, and we did a program on that. You can go to our website, edmundfitzgerald.com, and look at that one as well. It links from the Titanic Disaster DVD.com. But on the Eastland, they took a top-heavy ship and they took the superstructure, reinforced it with concrete, and put additional heavy lifeboats on it. So when people were boarding in the Chicago River that morning, as a result of this law that was passed for the Titanic, it made the engineer was trying to keep the ballast level, and people were running from one side of the ship to the other and looking at people on the shore and waving at them.
Right.
And the ship capsized in the Chicago harbor, and 835 people died as a result of this. And pretty much, here you're passing a safety law as a result from the lifeboats in the Titanic, and here you cause another 835 people indirectly as a result to die, and which is supposed to be something for safety. So sometimes you just can't win with this. But pretty much going too fast for conditions, not having enough lifeboats, and the radio communication that really hurt. Because there was another ship, Rob, California, this is the one that warned the Titanic about the iceberg. But when the Marconi operator on the Titanic shouted back, "Shut up, leave us alone," turned off the radio and went to bed about 10:30, 10:30, 10:45 that night, and then an hour later, she came in contact with the icebergs, and when they were radioing for help and an SOS and sparking back with the radio to the California, that operator went to bed. And then there was even more. They were launching rockets that night, and they saw rockets, and they even woke up the captain, but the captain looked and he decided, that's nothing, maybe they're celebrating or whatever, and he went back to bed, and they didn't hear about it until the next morning after the Carpathia, which was like 60 miles away. They had to steer around 6 icebergs that night, and they even modified their the ship's engine. They modified the heat in the engine so they could gain about another 3 knots, but unfortunately, they were too late to pick up all those people because they were frozen to death from the hypothermia, being in the water from the exposure. Where the California, if they were, there was the Senate testimony in New York. They said that they believed that if the California would have responded, they could have probably saved just so many lives. I mean, over 1,500 souls were lost that night, Rob.
It's a lot of people. Mind you, one loss of life is too much. However, 1,500 people, my Lord. I understand the people of Halifax, Nova Scotia, played a big part in the aftermath.
Yes, there was. They have the cemetery and the tributes, and they have wonderful remembrances there every year, and they have the just wonderful cemeteries, and you can see so much documentation, and there's a museum over there, and it's sort of really the gateway because there were so many of the bodies that they recovered ended up there as well.
Could this happen again?
Yes, and it did. I mean, just
not too long ago, right? The Costa cruise line, yeah,
just off the coast of Italy. What are they calling the captain? The Chicken of the Sea right now, which is sort of a little comedy to sort of a horror trauma thing, but. Yeah, what you have, what I see, now I've done 36 documentaries and just a lot of ships. What I find more often than not, there's a human error so often, not that it isn't spurred on as a result of something that's out there physically or weather or fog or maybe going too fast for conditions or misreading radar. And then what quite often happens is even if you had enough lifeboats for the ship, where the Titanic sank pretty slowly, but like even in the case where the Andrea Doria was in fog and they misread the radar distances and they ended up having a collision, the list was so rapid that it often renders half of the lifeboats useless.
Now, the Andrea Doria, if my memory serves me correct, sank in the St. Lawrence River?
No, you're thinking of the. I think that's the Princess of Ireland.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
The Andrea Doria was off of Long Island in 1956,
right.
And it was rammed by the Stockholm. That was outbound to go to Sweden, and the Andrea Doria was a beautiful the floating palace, the Italian liner heading in, and that was a fog situation where they think I think it was the third mate on the Stockholm misread the radar guide rings. And instead of I think he thought he was 12 or 15 miles away from the Andrea Doria when I think he was 3 or 6. And then they misread the pip on the radar screen, and they both zigged and zagged at the wrong time, and they literally hit each other. And back then, they didn't have the shipping lanes like they do today. It was like a free-for-all. There was a lot more ships back there, back in the 50s than there are even today, because now the ships are even bigger. But there was no shipping lanes back then. So, you think about when we're driving down the freeway, you have the north and southbound lanes, east or west. This was just, you just went where you went kind of thing back then. They weren't that up on safety as much as they should have been back then, and that was another thing they learned from the Andrea Doria, that we should install having shipping lanes where everybody stays in their own zone.
The last time you were on, Mark, we talked about the Edmund Fitzgerald. Has anything happened since then? Has there been an actual concrete finding on what happened to the Edmund Fitzgerald?
I don't think we'll ever find anything conclusive, Rob. Nothing's really changed since my interview last was probably about maybe 2 years ago. I think I was on. What happened? What reading in between the lines, and I interviewed authors and experts and captains of the Coast. I even interviewed the captain of the Marine Board investigation that conducted the investigation for the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard thinks that she had faulty hatch-covered gaskets, which would allow thousands of gallons of water a minute to come in. There was a huge freshwater hurricane that night. There was 35-foot waves, some largest waves that are capable on Lake Superior that night. And now we're talking the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes and Lake Superior especially has a wave that'll just chop your ship to death, where the ocean has these big swales in the separation, but the Great Lakes and Lake Superior, the distance between the waves is so much shorter.
Is that what they call the Three Sisters?
Yeah, there was Three Sisters also. That mentioned that a larger wave than normal came by in a succession of three. Captain Bernie Cooper testified that he thought there was a much larger wave that came by and thought that caught up to her. The most popular theory that from all the research that I later believe in, which I first thought maybe the Coast Guard was right with the faulty hatch cover gaskets, is that she touched on a shoal near Caribou Island. And most sailors will believe that she grounded, and both of her radar units were out. And if she bottomed out, she could have opened up some water below her water line, and she was carrying this taconite iron ore, Rob, and this ore just really absorbs like 25-30% of its weight in water.
Wow.
And in the Fitz case, the Fitzgerald only had a center drain. So she didn't have a right or left or starboard or port drainage system. All that water had to go down the middle of the ship all the way back to the rose box in the back, and that would be pumped out. And her pumps were on, and she did have a starboard list. And literally in a blip of a radar screen, Rob, the Captain McSorley, he had a ship-to-shore wireless radio. In a blip of a radar screen, she disappeared, and she vanished. And literally about couple minutes before that, the third mate on the Anderson was communicating with Captain McSorley on the Fitzgerald, and he says, "By the way, how are you making out?" And he says, "Well, we're holding our own. We're going along like an old shoe." And literally in a blip of a radar screen, a couple minutes later, she vanished. That's how fast she sank that night. 29 souls lost.
And am I correct in believing that still there has not been one body recovered from that sinking?
They say Lake Superior never gives up her dead. I think at one point they claimed a diver claimed they saw some kind of body. I don't know conclusively on that. And to answer your question, the beginning of the question on the Fitzgerald, they still conclusively don't know what caused her to sink, because the bow is in 24 feet of the muck of the bottom of Lake Superior. They did look at the stern. They couldn't find any conclusiveness if there was any grounding. And the middle of the ship is just a debris field. It's about 200 feet, which is a garden up mess. It's just a huge debris field. But the bow is in 24 feet of the lake's floor, so we'll never know. And I don't see how that's going to change. I don't think it's considered pretty much an underwater grave at this point, and out of respect for the families and the people that lost their lives that night. And I think rightfully so. It should just remain that way.
Out of your 36 productions that you've done, which is the most popular?
For me, the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I happen to own the website edmundfitzgerald.com, so there could be part of that. But that's sort of the Titanic of the Great Lakes, if you will. Now, our Titanic is newer, but I do a lot with the Great Lakes. We've done haunted tales of the Great Lakes and haunted lighthouses of the Great Lakes. I did ghostly lighthouses of North America. We did Great Lakes shipwreck disasters. So we got a lot of Great Lake things going on, Rob. So for us, the Edmund Fitzgerald, we have the Edmund Fitzgerald anthology, which has the 4 1-hour DVDs, and we have the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald and the Edmund Fitzgerald past and present. Our latest one is the Edmund Fitzgerald controversy. And we have a 2-pack right now. If you go to either one of our websites where that'll link, we can get the new Titanic and the Edmund Fitzgerald controversy. That's a pretty popular one. But for us, the Titanic isn't as popular as the Fitzgerald. The Fitzgerald is the Titanic of the Great Lakes, if you will, Rob.
Yeah,
but but we specialize a little bit more in the Great Lakes, so there could be some of that. And there's been an awful lot of saturation on the Titanic, obviously, with the 100-year anniversary,
Sure.
and since the movie 13 years ago also.
And of course, it's coming back out now in theater in 3D.
3D, it was just released earlier this month, yeah. So I haven't had a chance to see that. I've been a little busy boy here doing some interviews.
That's great.
Yeah.
I've got about 2 minutes before my next break. Why did you get involved in shipwrecks and lighthouses?
My late father used to always tell me about the Titanic and the Andrea Doria. I grew up on the Great Lakes. I grew up between Chicago and Milwaukee on Lake Michigan, and there was a shipwreck called the SS Wisconsin that sank off Kenosha, Wisconsin. And he used to always fill me with these stories about that, and I started making films many years ago, and I did this documentary as a labor of love on the Wisconsin, and there was a lot of interest in it, and I proceeded to make more and more of them, and my first one was the mystery of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The first Fitzgerald one was my fifth documentary on shipwrecks. And then we started doing more and more of them, and then we thought, well, let's try some lighthouses, because there's some fascinating stories about lighthouses. So we did that, and then we sort of went back to the ships, and then here the crown jewel for us is obviously the next one was, we did the Andrea Doria, but the Titanic, that was, that's the one, and here we are over 20 years later, and we're still trucking along.
Stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. X-Zone Nation. We're talking to Mark Gumbinger. Here's the website, www.titanicdisasterdvd.com. That's titanicdisasterdvd.com. When we come back, we've got about 4.5 minutes when we come back. So we're going to ask Mark about haunted lighthouses. Why not? This is the X-Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Mark Gumbinger and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Mark, you and I have been talking about the Andrea Doria. We talked about the Edmund Fitzgerald, as sung there by Gordon Lightfoot, and we also talked about, of course, the Titanic. But you've also done DVDs and productions on haunted lighthouses. And in your opinion, where is the most haunted lighthouse in the Great Lakes?
There's so many of them. People seem to gravitate toward lighthouses in general. I think they're really, for us, they're almost our North America and Canada and the United States. They're really the castles that we have here, where Europe has their castles.
Yeah.
To us, I think Canada and the Great Lakes and in our areas, and they are our castles. And every lighthouse has a story, and virtually every lighthouse has a haunted story. Now, are they true or not? They might be, or they might not be, but a lot of them are fun to talk about. There's one of the big ones that come to mind for me is the old Presque Isle Lighthouse up in Lake Huron. Mm-hmm. It continues to turn its lights on for passing ships, even though the wiring to the lamp has been removed. There was an incident where somebody was out in the fog one night, and they were summoned back to shore from the light of the old lighthouse, but the Coast Guard came in and cut out all the electric to the lights. But somehow, some way, and there's been hundreds of documentations that the light was on.
Wow.
How do you explain something like that? There's the one in Gibraltar Lighthouse in Canada, where there was a story of a murdered beer maker, and he's allegedly still looking for his murderers. He was a lighthouse tender keeper, and he liked making his own beer, and he had some like a little bar one night, and some people came back, and I think he cut them off from drinking, and they came back and killed them. So he's supposedly seen still looking for his murders that night. There's just so many. But if you go to like our EdmundFitzgerald.com, you can click on a real neat one is Haunted Lighthouses of the Great Lakes. And we also have one called Ghostly Lighthouses of North America. They're a lot of fun, and but we're really proud of the new Titanic, and the Edmund Fitzgerald, of course, is another classic that lives on.
As always, Mark, great talking to you. Continued success, and I look forward to the next time you and I chat here in the X Zone. Once again, give our listeners your websites, please.
Sure, you can go to TitanicDisasterDVD.com. That's www.TitanicDVDdisaster.com, and that'll also link you to our EdmundFitzgerald.com. That's www.EdmundFitzgerald.com.
Mark, take care of yourself. Look forward to the next time we meet.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Well, that's it, X Zone Nation. Another great 4 hours. And, of course, if you'd like further information on Mark Gumbinger, you can go to EdmundFitzgerald.com or TitanicDisasterDVD.com. That's TitanicDisasterDVD.com. Well, there we go. Another show, another 4 hours. Some of our affiliates are going to carry us another 4 hours. However, if your affiliate doesn't and you'd still like to listen to the show, you can listen to us online 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day at www.xzonetv.com. So until the next time we meet, take care of each other. We are our brother's keeper. And smile. It doesn't hurt, and you're going to make somebody's day 100% better than it was before. So until tomorrow, X Zone Nation, always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night now.